And we're back.
All right, guys, we're back.
So, I want to go back over, like we did a podcast on this, like, 2 ago or whatever it was. The whole, with Maxwell Demon and everything always turns back to the free energy principle and all that stuff. I've been thinking the one we did about the nervous system, like I need extra stuff. Right. So there's a deeper complex at play that I've been looking at the Maxwell Demon stuff. Like, so if you guys don't know, Maxwell was one of the greatest scientists we had, electromagnetic force, the whole thing. Right. And he had that idea of it's a letter that he sent to a friend that actually rocked science, physics at the time, 18 something. The idea that imagine a demon, very, very small, the size of a molecule, right? Who gets to direct where a molecule goes.
Yeah.
Right. And so imagine now you have a closed room with so fast and slow molecules. So the idea was
the temperature
discussion,
thing,
right?
So the temperature, although the room may be a uniform temperature, some molecules will still be slightly warmer than others. And
they move faster than others. So imagine if that demon gets to direct thing, which means he goes the one that move slower over there, so colder, and he takes the one that move faster, so therefore hotter, over there. That means he would create a difference of hot versus cold within that room. And that could power an engine.
Yeah. Create movement essentially perpetually.
Because, right. And here comes the problem. Then a Maxwell Demon could create a perpetual engine, which is not, violates the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, and all that problem.
Yeah, with only the power of essentially a decision.
Right.
And a switch.
Intent.
Intellect and a switch.
Yeah, exactly. So a simple observer would be able to do that.
Yeah.
So with intent, you would be able to, so that, like you have to understand, at the time, he rocked physicists because they were like, oh shit, turns out it doesn't work like that because the demon himself is an observer.
And there is some sort of energy requirement in the soul.
In order to choose.
Yeah.
And so that, it's like the double slit experiment with the observer. So the demon itself creates entropy that at the end, the second law is not violated. But at the time he created a major issue. So that's called a Maxwell's demon, right? And I've been looking at it from the free energy principle, right? So we go back to the difference between life and death is life wants to fight entropy. So we still have that problem of intent with that, right? What is it? Where it comes from? Yeah. What does it mean? How is intent? So intent exists, obviously, any which way you want to look at it. So what is it made of? Where does it live?
Yeah.
What does it mean? Right. So the number of stuff like that, right? And so I'm at a stage where there'll be obviously deeper stages than that, but this is where I'm at right now. So it seems to me that I don't know what to do with this versus I know what to do with this seems to be a Maxwell's demon. That I know this. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about that from the sleep perspective. Okay. And then I might extrapolate a little bit outside of that. But look at it from a sleep perspective only. We had the podcast where I explained noradrenaline with schizophrenia, depression, and anxiety. Let me just take schizophrenia. So when you have a positive symptom, so positive symptom of schizophrenia is hallucinations. It's not positive in the sense it's good. It's in the sense of action-based.
It's
an action-based.
It's a plus.
Right. The negative, the negative symptoms means catatonia. Yeah. You don't just completely go off, right? Yeah. Positive symptoms, hallucinations, persecutions, all that stuff, right? Yeah. So if we look in the sense of positive symptoms, that happens when you have a lot of noradrenaline, right? That's going to come in important during the sleep phase. So schizophrenia is what? Like you have the craziest beliefs, usually persecution, right? And all that stuff, right? So now, if I look at sleep, noradrenaline there's a correlation between noradrenaline and what is called REM density. How deep you go into REM sleep. Mm-hmm. Right. So REM sleep is a stage where you sleep at your deepest, right? But your body cannot act. But now let me take that sleep phase to the max. What is the deepest you can sleep? Well, when you're basically in the matrix, something that you feel is so real, you think you're in the real world, mm-hmm. right? Right. So let's take that sleep right there. If you've done the protocol, usually you know what I'm talking about, where you're in something that has very high emotions and you're in it, like in it.
Vivid, horrifying hallucination.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, for some people it was, but yeah, or some very weird ass one. We've heard stories. There were some weird ones.
My problem is they're really, really boring, but they seem really awesome at the time. So I got a bunch of shit to explain, and there's nothing to explain.
Oh,
fuck. It felt so much, but there was nothing there.
Oh, there you go. That's interesting, especially considering what I'm going to talk about now.
Fuck.
But I would describe as the deepest dreams are as a schizophrenic moment. You can fly. You can breathe underwater. Mm-hmm. Someone is after you. Yeah. You're running naked in front of everybody. You're running, but you're running super slow.
All based on no current inputs either from your sensory inputs as well. It's all based completely internal.
Right, internal. Right. But that's my point, is at that moment, when you go really deep, you think it does.
Yeah. And for you, your, if you will, interpretation or...
Right. That's what I'm going to get to. So let's say that those dreams are schizophrenic. So let's push that a little bit. Imagine if so it is being expressed during your dreams. What if you could not express it in your dreams? Then would it leak into the real world? Because imagine, so those dreams, if some form of expression that allows you to, if it's let's say it's a Maxwell Demon, right? In a way, that expression, like, if it's your way of dealing with stuff, right? Why would it be dealing with the dreams? It'd be, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can breathe other water. Like I don't have to suffocate. Like if it was a way to deal with where your mind needs to heal.
Yeah.
Needs to deal with the shit you couldn't deal with. Remember, like somatic errors.
Yeah.
Right? Where if you were acting them out in your dreams.
Well, and there's a lot about in some dream study too, where they do talk that during that time, there is a lot of association with like memory association and consolidation, which is, I think, kind of to reconcile that. If you will.
So is it possible that someone who's schizophrenic is because they can't do it in their dreams, so they have to do it in the real world?
Yeah. Or that there's so much. Is it that the sleep,
for example,
that there's just too much, that the sleep isn't enough, or is
and then therefore he has to bleed into the real world?
Or is the sleep just at a fundamental level so dysfunctional that they never get into that state? And
exactly. So therefore they have to do it in the real world. What if that's the base of schizophrenia? It's just a way for your brain to heal. But because you have not done it when your body was not capable of moving, REM sleep, you're doing it when your body is capable of moving, and now you're actually acting on it. So what if schizophrenia in the real world is actually a dream state that was never acted out?
It's crazy.
Right. So let's take it to Maxwell Demon. So that would mean that sleep, which is a third of our existence, right, is actually far more important than we understand, in the sense of this is where where at least one of the Maxwell demons live, which is, I can do this versus I cannot. So the dream allows you to express all this, to go into what it feels like a physical expression where you can do whatever it is that you need to do.
And detached from any external stimulus, then that just kind of becomes a reality, if you will.
But if it's deep enough, you did the thing.
Yeah.
You breathe underwater. You did fly.
Which should then begin to start to reconcile or drive apart somatic errors.
Right.
Depending on how things...
Because again, like you didn't, if we look at it from a Freudian perspective, it was not breathing underwater. It was probably being choked or not breathing correctly or whatever. But now that I breathe underwater, I dealt with the situation.
Yeah.
But almost in a physical sense.
Yeah.
What if that's what the dreams are? That's why it heals your mind, because you're able to deal with the somatic error, because in the dream you can do it, or you can't, and then it fucks you up for 2 days.
There are really interesting, really deep conversations out there from physicists, neuroscientists, and a lot of woo too, on what sleep really is. And the fact of the matter is, when you get down to what it is, why you need it, it's really not that
we know we need it, but that's all right.
Like why you have to turn off for a certain amount of time. Like, think of the amount of vulnerability that you are.
Right.
When we talk about evolution, a third of your existence, you can be snatched the fuck up right away. Yeah. And just, you're completely ready to be eaten.
Nothing you can do. And by the way, in REM sleep, you can't hear shit either.
Yeah. And that's a very tough thing for, I think, evolution to reconcile, unless that function is really important.
Because that's a price to pay.
And to put a pin in how important that is, and then wonder, well, we still don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know what that is.
So how do you study a system? Well, that's what happened when we don't have sleep.
Yeah.
What do we see?
Dude, as a guy who's done some wild drugs in his day, you stay awake for 3 days.
Right.
4 days.
Hallucinations are coming up.
And it is fucking maddening.
Right.
Like,
but
it is.
There's something called delirium.
Yeah. And I've seen it on people. I've been there.
Exactly. I've watched them do it. Yeah, exactly.
But it is.
It's called tweaking.
Yeah, it is. Listen, meth country. So everybody tries.
You do what you gotta do.
But it was like, you get to the point where, and I don't believe that that's a measure of toxicity either. That I don't think that it's chemical. I think I could always associate it to the sleep. But there are moments where you would see in people where they literally are in a place where they think they're in a place, in a situation that they're not. I remember a girl I knew, she was standing there, and it was all of a sudden for like an hour and a half. She's like, are they still downstairs? When are they getting it? And it was like, nobody's been here. It's just us. And we're not even in this place that you're talking about. Like, and it's this moment of madness where you're not sure if they're going to get back. Or then you get to crazy things like paranoia, but where they are seeing things and or thinking of things in situations that are bringing them into reality. And it is very interesting. And I believe that to be more about the sleep than it is about the chemicals.
All you describe is schizophrenia symptoms.
Yeah.
Schizophrenia symptoms.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, right. But, you know what I mean? So that's a very interesting idea. And again, maybe the foundation of the dream is to be a Maxwell Demon. Is so that, because Maxwell Demon would mean what? It's like, as long as you believe you're doing it, you're doing it.
Yeah.
So it's a matrix.
Yeah.
Right? You're acting out on the dream, therefore you're doing it physically, because that's what it feels like, and therefore you're going toward life instead of death. That's how we fight entropy.
Which means it has value too. I mean, so it's not just arbitrary, it doesn't just
Life
happen.
is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, and the thing you had said in the past
that's
too,
the value.
Is that is that you don't do something because it has value. It has value because you do it.
Exactly.
And if that's the nature of that situation that's going on in the sleep with that level of importance, then at the very least, it is valuable and it's something that you need to try to comprehend.
There might be a fundamental truth then to sleep, in the sense of, this is where you feel you can do.
Yeah.
Because in the dreams, you do them. And so there's almost something to be said about it. If you feel invulnerable in your dreams, then that will lead you to be stronger outside of it, because you keep doing it. And therefore, you can.
Yeah.
Because if you keep doing it, you can do it.
Well, and some things like recurring dreams, recurring themes, I view a lot of those things as getting gradual exposure and kind of correcting your thing on too.
But you see visualization for athletes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like when they can feel the lift, we know they're going to make it.
Yeah.
At least it's tremendously more likely. So maybe that visualization is just a small window into what dreams are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So maybe sleep is far, far more than we think, instead of just shutting off for 8 hours. That might not be that. That might be literally a pathway to life, or a second life that we have. Many cultures have said that, by the way.
Yeah.
That's not for me. Many cultures, like the Celtic cultures, American Indians, Asia, India, well, technically it's Asia, but anyway, Indian culture all cultures have talked about dreams as a much more important thing than we do now.
You want to know my favorite unscientific basis for what dreams are? For what sleep, the purpose of sleep was? It's just based in nothingness, but I think it was like built upon like the multiverse theory, right? That at any day, the next day you branch off into infinite possibilities, and that essentially you, in your sleep, you kind of then get oriented into the reality with which you're going to go to that day, and boom, boom, and your decisions, and that was always kind of a cool concept that
you never know.
That
might be a base to it.
I base it on nothing factual, but I thought it was pretty kick-ass.
Yes, at that stage, it's mostly guesses.
I was like, listen, tomorrow I got to wake up and be the Tyler that becomes a billionaire. not tomorrow,
Right.
but tomorrow I got to make sure I get on that
How many cultures have
path.
said like that's how you become a billionaire, by every morning waking up with the. But imagine if you dreamt again Matrix type of dream and everything, then that means you have done it.
Yeah.
And so the way things work, what is crazy about that is there's a physiological ground to this, what I'm talking about. Like you see, for example, controlled stress versus uncontrolled stress. So controllable stress versus uncontrollable stress is not processed by the same parts of the brain. It's not the same network.
Yeah.
When you can control the stress, or controllable stress activates the noradrenaline, which is linked to the REM sleep. Anyway, noradrenaline toward the locus coeruleus, so that particular part of the brain, right? When it's uncontrollable stress, we saw the noradrenaline go up, but it was produced by the hypothalamus, not the locus coeruleus, another part of the brain. So there was like a mental component to it and a physical component to it. The difference is, by the way, once the skill was learned to control the stress, the noradrenaline went down. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between the two? Well, the one that goes to the hypothalamus is almost like a reflex. Like it's uncontrollable stress. You just react, right? The other one was controllable. That's something that you can learn. So the difference between the two is one, you go like, I can deal with this. The other one, I cannot.
Yeah.
And that changed the brain pathways dealing with the shit.
Which makes it basically an entirely different thing.
Completely different. Yeah. It's the same thing as noradrenaline and adrenaline. Adrenaline is there where the sympathetic fails. So where noradrenaline fails, adrenaline shows up.
Gotcha.
So noradrenaline is a scalpel. Adrenaline is a hammer. We're back to the immune system with natural killer cells. So you see that continuously. And again, the difference between the two is I can do this, whether I cannot. Natural killer cells, NK cells versus the more precise one. LK cells is like, I can't deal with that particular virus, so I'm just going to kill everybody.
Kill everything. Yeah.
Right. But the other one is like, no, I can deal with that, and he learns and it's precise, and it's not the same, again, pathway to produce both. But so noradrenaline is very precise as a scalpel. It is not adrenaline. It's the nervous system there's a dissociation between the two. It's not the same part of the nervous system. It's not the sympathetic anymore. So they are not related. Even physiologically speaking, from all the way up to hormone we produced, and even where we produce those hormones from, is completely separate. Whether you believe, feel, whether you can learn from something, can do that thing, versus when you cannot. It's that big of a difference. So there is a Maxwell Demon somewhere that goes, I believe I can do this, versus I believe I cannot.
Yeah.
It's even physiologically speaking, there is a ground there.
I use the term belief. Is that a trained thing? Is that simply a status? Is that neuroscientifically in a Sam Harris way devoid of what's the word? Devoid of choice or devoid of our own input? Is it
is there a...
You're supposed to know all these things.
Exactly.
You're the guy with the podcast.
Exactly. There is... That's the stage I'm at right now, is there is a difference between I can do this versus I cannot. I am capable of dealing with this situation versus I am not capable of dealing with that situation. There is a Maxwell Demon there that will change the path of your everything, of your nervous system, all the way to production of hormones. They're completely different. Yeah. So that's the thing, is there's probably one before that, but at that stage, that's where I'm at. But yeah, so it is a belief of whether you can or you cannot. It's that dealing with the somatic error, that processing of the somatic error, and whether you think you can or whether you think you cannot seems to change everything. That's literally, I think, the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
Because if you look at what life and death is life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. That's Carl Friston explained it way better than me. That is about believing that you can do things.
Yeah.
You know, like, so that you change your influence on the outside world, creates your own existence.
And that belief that you cannot manage such an endeavor is kind of just...
is increasing entropy.
Is kind of just laying down and dying.
Exactly. It's letting entropy win in that sense. And so there's a Maxwell Demon there. And I find that extremely important. So that the whole idea of belief and stuff might be actually, there's a physiological component to belief.
Yeah.
Like that we see on a hormonal level. Yeah. Right. And I believe, like, so that's why I think the dreams the sleep is so important, because I think at the dream level, when you truly believe you are doing something, in a weird way, you are doing it.
Or you're learning how to, or that you can, or that it's possible.
So you are doing it.
Yeah.
So when you feel like you're sleep, like you're flying in your sleep, in a way, you are doing it. It will create things. It has a physical component that matters to you. How deep does that go? Don't know.
I can't drag you any further into that, I don't think.
But no, because after that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But imagine then the importance of sleep. I believe it's far more than we understand.
Yeah.
And I think we're treating it like it's a lawnmower.
Yeah. I think I had actually just pulled up, there's some really good talks, like panel discussions on sleep, and there's some theorizing and some other things. And I've seen about probably, 3 or 4 of these 1 or 2 hour things. And I just pulled up another one the other night, which was really funny, because you messaged me the next morning about this. But I had looked at it and I was like, I can't get into this right now. And I shut it off and then went to sleep for a night of super weird ass dreams. Then Julien's like, hey, we got this thing. We're going to do sleep and this and this. And I was like, I should have watched the fucking sleep thing. And then in my head, I was like, well, it's better off probably getting sleep.
Yeah. Yes. But then we're talking more than getting sleep. That's the thing. We're talking getting dreams.
Yeah.
Most people think sleep, I pass out 8 hours, I'm fine.
Well, and
there's a disrespect almost.
And does recollection of dreams mean dreams happen or not either? So is our comprehension or our in this state ability to recount even that they happened or the experience, is that relevant? Is that even matter whether or not they happened before? We really don't know.
So we're going to REM density.
Yeah.
Right. REM sleep density exists. They measure that with how fast your eyes flick and everything. But so there's an entire thing. So it's not, we shouldn't say 8 hours of sleep, it's 8 hours of dreaming. Right. Yeah. And so that means the deeper you go in your dreams, the more you're alive, and vice versa. That's what everything is pointing out toward, is you have to go in your dreams so hard. You live in the matrix. It's a third of your existence.
If you don't wake up and every once in a while be like, I think I know Kung Fu.
Exactly. I had dreams where I woke up going like, I don't know what existence that was, but I hijacked something.
There's the thing I have where I wake up and it's everybody's familiar with this, but it's such an intense feeling, and there's so much there, and it's so overwhelming because it's essentially all you're experiencing also at that moment too. So when you wake up from it, you're like, wow, it's profound, and you try to process it all, and that's when you feel compelled to say somebody, and then very quickly, it slips, fades away. You can't get it into words because words wasn't how you experienced it either. And then as you speak it, you realize like, I'm a fucking idiot and this isn't interesting. Like it is
up to the moment when you say that,
moment, like,
I do believe that action is the healing, is becoming more alive, better, we need this. This is where healing starts.
Yeah.
That's why it's a third of our existence. It is an intrinsic part of life, way more than we understand. And it's not about just shunning your ass for 8 hours so your body recovers. No. That's not what we're talking about. Because if you look at the free energy principle and everything, biology is missing a very important key with all of this. That's another podcast. But I believe a major part of you being alive is how deep you go into your dreams, because it opens up the gate to things we do not. But I do believe there's a Maxwell Demon that lives there.
I do.
That whole intent is that moment right there in those deep dreams is something that we need, I think, in a much grander way than we still understand. There's something there about the fact that you can, experience.
Well, there's a piece that I think is missed with science when they start to look in things like this, is what they go immediately to. We've talked to this issue a lot, is they go to something they can measure.
Yeah.
And it's really tough to measure MRI, what this is.
Exactly.
And taking somebody's subjective, personal, anecdotal experience is maybe not the best data, but the fact of the matter is, like, people think about this. Think about this. What do you think it is based on, you know what I mean? Like where do you think this, what function do you think this is? But a theory that human beings can have these wild experiences of dreams, and they should be able to theorize on what maybe
Yeah.
It is. And let's farm through that before trying to look for something we can measure. I want ideas and theories
how many things did we miss because science just had not discovered them, whereas mankind had for the last fucking 10,000 years, but they're so arrogant and refuse the heart.
Yeah.
For the last, 150 years, why it just beats, it does nothing, it's just a muscle. Whereas cultures have been telling us forever that it's not, like, my heart is broken, this here. Yeah. And guess what? Finally now we're discovering it's a brain of its own, it's a nervous system of its own. He has, you know what I mean? He has an electromagnetic field 60 times stronger than the brain, a magnetic field 100 times stronger than the brain. He can actually send information. We actually measured it, but we needed people to say, I measured it, to know that the heart was more than a muscle, where all cultures have talked about it. Come on. Like, how arrogant can the Western scientific world be? Like this, do you know that Nietzsche predicted most of this? Like, the more, because I'm back to reading Nietzsche. Yeah. And it's great now because I have an entire different perspective on this. Like, I'm reading it's so awesome because I can understand a lot of things better. Not as intensely as back then, but, better now. So it's fascinating. But there's an entire thing where he was criticizing, for him, it was always against Christianity, but you could apply that to the academic world of today. Yeah. It's kind of predicted the woke thing.
Dogma.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you see exactly the same thing where that arrogance of academics, which I still comes from the fact that they can't do anything else. Yeah. Like, they know intrinsically that in the real world, they're all fucked. None of them can do a blue-collar job, can train, can do anything except shine in a university setting. Yeah. Take those people outside of universities, and what do you see? Like,
starve.
Yeah. They would all starve to death. So there's an arrogance there that is, I think, limiting us as humans. Again, the heart was an example. Yeah. I do believe sleep is another. Yeah. There is something deeper there. And that Maxwell Demon stuff is what I'm chasing.
Well, we have a massive amount of scientific resources going into things like chemistry, boner pills, even fitness training, like all of this stuff, fitness and health. There's a lot of money going into exercise. Do you know how many hours a day most people exercise on average? Like half an hour. Yeah. Really. And yet we spend 8 hours a day sleeping. And while there is certainly plenty of research and stuff going on, I think it's more about dysfunction than it is getting to the root of what it is.
It's to make sure you shut your eyes for 8 hours. Yeah. That's as far as we're going right
now. I've, by the way, if anybody out here is a respiratory therapist, I have some really interesting questions and theory I'd like to ask about sleep apnea, CPAP machines.
I was reading about that today and how much it maxes the HPA axis.
Well, there's a huge issue that I'm finding as I've reduced just pressure that I think it creates such a dependency on the machine for breathing and breathing function and muscular function.
Sounds like a capitalist society.
There's a 30%, I think it's 30% reduction in the range of motion, contractile range of motion of the diaphragm.
That'd be a problem.
Like this is after, I don't know, a certain amount of time, but essentially your diaphragm, you then cannot breathe beyond a certain depth because the machine holds you open at a certain point, a certain base level. Therefore, you don't need that. Right. Therefore, in the real world, you try to breathe, you're not, for 8 hours a day, you are not contracting in that range of motion when you breathe.
A muscle that is supposed to be continuously. Ooh, yes.
And so it moves, but not in that range of motion. And it does contract when it does. But it essentially, I think it creates this, much like we see in lots of faulty system interventions. Yes. We go in and we remedy this. You need to breathe more when you sleep.
Right. You try to optimize one part and then you fuck up everything else.
And then let's get the breathing and the body weight down and the patterns and exercise and all this stuff in order. That needs to be part of the plan. Not put a person on this machine. Then they're going to gradually get less and less functional breathing patterns to the point where then when they try to exercise, there's other huge problems with exertion, depth of breath, breath control, and what that does to the nervous system. I think things cascade. And it reminded me when I was reading this stuff, I was like, oh, that's kind of how like we just decided that we have a problem with drug addiction. Yeah. So what we should do is just make it illegal and lock people in cages and be extra hard on it.
Shoot them in their head.
And then we create this thing where it's like, oh, now we have more poverty, we have more people, we have more broken homes, and we've created more drug addiction and more dependency in an environment that creates more of that. And I think that's the same thing I find with sleep apnea machines, is that I think that intervention is important if you're not breathing at night, but it can't be the only thing. So that's my little theory, and I've been looking through some stuff on it. But respiratory therapist, I'd like to have a chat about it. So. Well, that's got us wrapped up.
Yep.
sleep and stuff. We'll talk to you next week.
Maxwell Demons.
If you want to support the podcast, head on over to podcast.strongfit.com. There you could donate or join the YouTube channel. Also, go to strongfit.com. There you're going to find our online courses, education, and all of our seminar dates should be there as well. Head on over to strongfitlibrary.com to keep up to date on everything Julien's been working on. And follow StrongFit1 on Instagram and Tyler F. and Stone.